so damn sure you wanna look kind 24/7 on my mind. All I ever wanted is to be with you. Making me feel is so brand new. I thought I can love no more.
Jai Gurudev, everybody. Welcome to the next lesson of Panchadha Maitri. That is the five-fold friendship of planets. I've been getting a lot of questions from my last video about planets. So before getting on to this topic, let me share something very basic about planets. Most of us have this question that the 9 planets we know, or as mentioned by science, are different than the 9 planets of Jyotish. Well, of course, yes. The important thing here to understand is the term used by Vedic Jyotish for these 9 astral bodies is graha. There is no English equivalent term for graha, so we use the closest synonym, that is planets, to address these energies. In Sanskrit, the term graha is derived out of the word grahana, which means to take or to consume, and one that consumes or take away is graha. Now, what is it that they take away? Important thing. All of us are here on this planet Earth is to get rid of our karmas. And all 9 grahas, as mentioned in Vedic Jyotish, are those bodies or energies that has maximum impact on our consciousness, individual as well as united. To help get rid of all conditioning or karmas, these are the energies interwoven with our consciousness so deep they are capable of consuming all of our karmas. Sun and moon may not be the planets as per science, but they are grahas. The energy of sun works on the level of self, and the energy of moon connects to the deepest level of mind. That's why wherever your moon is placed in your birth chart is considered as your Janma Rashi or your birth sign, the most important place. In Western astrology, it is because of sun. Similarly, Rahu and Ketu are no planets, but they are ecliptical points. When sun, moon and earth are aligned, it forms Rahu and Ketu axis. This whole play of Maya or ignorance is nothing but a shadow hiding self from mind or clouding mind from reality. That is Rahu, the most important point impacting karmas. So when I'm talking about planets in Vedic Jyotish, I mean grahas. And know that all of them have only one role to play. The only ultimate goal is to consume all your karmas and make you free. And that is why all of them, be it benefic or malefic, are equally revered and worshipped. Somebody asked me that you talk about these planets as if they are living beings. Yes. If you're learning Jyotish, the first and most important thing you should learn is that these grahas are more than living beings. They're conscious bodies and not just sand and rocky mountains floating in the sky. In fact, I would recommend to treat them as demigods or deities. And the science says that everything in this creation is chaotically connected to everything else. The chaos theory or butterfly effect, if you've read about. So similarly, all grahas are related to each other and influence each other, including our planet Earth, which is indicated as Lagna or ascendant in our birth chart. That's why you see high tide on a full moon day, or many people in mental asylum get lunatic attacks on new moon day or full moon day. These are very gross indication of how moon affects the water element and the human mind. Similarly, sun and all other grahas, I can have a separate lesson on it. Probably the next lesson I should talk about how planets affect the different aspects of our life on this planet. So as we are talking about mutual relationship of grahas, And we have already learned about the family of 9 grahas. Let's know more about how they relate with each other. In Vedic Jyotish, it is called Panchadha Maitri, which means fivefold friendship or no friendship. So there is something called natural friendships of planet, which means irrespective of what you do, where you are, I am your friend. There's other term called temporal friendship or temporary friendship, which means because you are in a position to help me or support me, I am your friend, otherwise I am not. So let's talk of permanent friendship first. Sun, the king, is a permanent friend to Mars, Jupiter, and Moon. It's neutral to Mercury and enemy to Venus and Saturn. Which means Sun feels happy if it is in the house, if it is in the sign owned by Moon, Mars, Jupiter, or if it sits with Moon, Mars, Jupiter, it feels happy. In the sign of Mercury, it's neutral, and in the signs of Venus or Saturn, if it sits with Venus or Saturn, it doesn't feel good. Similarly, Moon. Moon is happy with Sun and Mercury, or if it is in the house of Sun and Mercury. It's neutral with rest of the other planets and enemy to nobody. So Moon is either happy or it's neutral in its natural state. Mars. Mars is friends with Sun, Moon and Jupiter, neutral to Venus and Saturn and enemy to Mercury. So Mars feels uncomfortable sitting with Mercury or in the houses of Mercury. It's okay when it's sitting with Venus or Saturn or in the houses of Venus or Saturn, but it's really happy when it is in the house of Sun or Moon or Jupiter or any of these planets are sitting with Mars. Mars feels happy. Mercury is friends with Sun and Venus, neutral to Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, and enemy to Moon. Yes, Moon is friends to Mercury, Mercury is enemy to Moon. Which says what? That if Moon goes in the house of Mercury, Moon feels good. If Moon sits with Mercury, Moon feels good. But if Mercury goes in the house of Moon, which is Cancer, it doesn't feel good. Moon and Mercury sitting together, Moon is happy, but Mercury is not happy. You remember, Mercury is the merchant, so of course Queen liked to shop. But if the merchant is called by Queen at its home and then made to show a lot of things, definitely the merchant won't like it. Right? Similarly, Jupiter. Jupiter is friends with Sun, Moon and Mars, neutral to Saturn, and enemy with Mercury and Venus. Venus is friends to Mercury and Saturn, neutral to Mars and Jupiter, and enemy with Sun and Moon. Yes, another interesting thing. Moon is exalted in the house of Venus, but Venus is enemy to Moon. Saturn. Mercury and Venus are friends. Jupiter is neutral to Saturn, and Sun, Moon, Mars are enemy to Saturn. So in the houses of Sun, Moon or Mars, Saturn is not comfortable, but in the house of Mercury or Venus, or if it sits with Mercury or Venus, it feels happy and comfortable. If you are wondering if there is any logic behind all this friendship, there is definitely one. It has been mentioned by Maharishi Parashar also. But for now, just to keep it simple, let's mug it up. Let's remember who is friends with whom. It will make our understanding much more simpler. But know that all these connections, all these friendships are permanent in nature. So come what may. Sun will be always friends to Moon, Mars, Jupiter, neutral to Mercury, enemy to Venus and Saturn. So all these relationships we have seen just now are permanent in nature, irrespective of what chart you are looking at, whose chart you are looking at. These are called permanent relationships. Now let's talk about temporary relationship, temporary friendship. And to understand this, let's get back to our reference chart, the same chart we used in our last video to understand. So in this video, let's start with Moon. So which all planets are temporary friends to Moon? Now know this sutra, that all those planets sitting 3 houses behind Moon and 3 houses ahead of Moon are friends with Moon. So in this case, the 3 houses behind Moon and 3 houses ahead of Moon are marked in blue. So if you can actually see, Mars, Venus and Rahu, Sun and Jupiter will act as friends with Moon. And Mercury and Saturn and Ketu will act as enemies to Moon. Let's take another planet, Sun and Jupiter. Let's take Sun. So here, 3 houses behind Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Rahu are the planets sitting in those houses, are friends with Sun and Jupiter. Mercury and Saturn are also friends with Sun and Jupiter. Ketu is enemy with Sun and Jupiter. But Sun is enemy to Jupiter, Jupiter is enemy to Sun because they are sitting in the same house. So it is only 3 houses behind, 3 houses ahead, not even the same house. If there are 2 planets or 3 planets, 4 planets sitting in the same house, they are not temporary friends. They are temporary enemies. Let's take one more planet, say Mars. 3 houses behind, 3 houses ahead. We have Moon, Sun, Jupiter and Mercury acting up as Mars friends. Saturn, Ketu, Venus and Rahu acting as Mars enemies. Similarly, Venus, Moon, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury acts as Venus's friend. Mars, Rahu, Saturn, Ketu act as Venus's enemies. You're getting the logic? So let's take one more planet, say Saturn. So in this case, let's say 3 houses before Saturn, 3 houses after Saturn, marked in blue. And here in this case, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury will act as friends to Saturn. Ketu will act as friends to Saturn. Though Sun and Saturn are natural enemies, but in this case, in this lifetime for this person, whomsoever chart belongs to, well, that's also a mystery we will talk about after maybe another 4 or 5 videos. Whose chart this is? This is a very interesting one. Let's see if you can guess whose chart this is. Huh? So, Saturn will be supported by Sun, Jupiter, Mercury and Ketu, and his enemy, and rest of the planets will act as enemies to Saturn, Moon, Mars, Venus, Rahu. So now once we know the natural and temporal relationship of planets and arrive at these friendship tables, we now are going to combine both these tables to arrive at final status of relationship amongst planets for this specific chart. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that it is 5-fold friendship. So when we are combining these tables, the formulae we should use are friend plus friend becomes great friend. Friend plus neutral becomes friend. Friend plus enemy becomes neutral. And enemy plus neutral becomes enemy. And enemy plus enemy becomes great enemy. So in one table, if you have Sun and Mars as friend, natural friends, and in other table, if you have Sun and Mars as enemy, so they become neutral, right? So in one table, if you have Sun and Saturn as enemy, and other table you get Sun and Saturn as enemy again, they become great enemy. Similarly, you arrive at 5-fold friendship. Please note that I have not considered Rahu and Ketu here. But in standard Jyotish software, you get these calculations with Rahu and Ketu. We will cover Rahu and Ketu separately in detail. Alright, so that's all about Panchadha Maitri. Knowing this relationship status of grahas is extremely important in judging any horoscope and making predictions. This is one of the most important basic concepts. Though it is usually calculated by Jyotish softwares, But for better understanding, I strongly recommend you to practice and calculate it yourself for at least 10 more charts, including yours. You may learn concepts by watching or reading, but practicing will actually make you connect with grahas at a subtler level and help in making better predictions. Alright, so keep practicing, keep learning, and may all grahas bless you with their benevolence. Thank you once again for listening. Have a happy Akshay Tritiya. Jai Gurudev.